80 hours with my language parent. So that's the goal that I set for myself at the beginning of this year, and I recently did it. And so I want to make a little video and tell you a little bit more about it. For those of you that are new here, my name's Joe. I'm a software engineer by day. I'm a native English speaker, and I've spent most of my life learning languages. So started learning Spanish the traditional way in middle school when I was 13. Took it all the way through high school and college. And then picked it back up several years later using Refold because I wanted to raise my daughter bilingual. And I've been on that journey as a bilingual parent for the last 2.5 years. I recently completed a language learning goal of 80 hours of passive listening with my language parent. And so I thought, it'd be cool to kind of do a video, kind of talk about, how it went, how I did it, all those kinds of things. If you haven't heard of a language parent, it's basically like somebody who you intentionally spend time with when you're consuming content, right? So maybe it's a podcast host, maybe it's a live streamer, but it's basically somebody who you treat almost as if they were your parent, right? This idea of spending lots of time with them to pick up their accent, pick up maybe their mannerisms, pick up their vocabulary, their expressions, things like that. So, yeah. Oh, and I'll drop a link in the description below if you want to read more from the Refold guide about language parents. So for the first section of this video, I kind of want to talk about why I set this goal. And the main reason was basically to prep for shadowing. So shadowing, again, is this idea, shadowing coursing, there's people kind of get up in the air if you don't explain them correctly, but shadowing is kind of like this real-time, imitating somebody, right? You're kind of following their voice. And then chorusing might be where you're pausing, maybe you're doing a sentence at a time. But anyways, prepping for shadowing, chorusing. I knew this is something that I eventually want to do to better my pronunciation, my intonation, just overall speech. And so I thought, okay, well, let's do the first easiest step, which is just consuming a lot of language parent content. And so, it was also the start of the year, and I was of 2024, and I was like, let's choose a goal that's kind of easy to do. Because obviously working full time, I mentioned I have a daughter, family, all of that. So I don't have a lot of time to do this active immersion where I'm sitting down, watching a video kind of thing. A lot of it is listening while I'm at work, listening while I'm at the gym, listening while I'm doing chores around the house, maybe in the evenings before bed, everyone's kind of sleeping. So anyways, that was kind of, looking at my circumstances and what was possible and thinking, okay, a passive listening goal can easily be incorporated into my daily routine. And it worked. I was able to hit the goal in 33 days, average about 2.5 hours per day. A lot of that would be, maybe 1 hour during lunch or in the beginning of work, and then 1 hour in the evenings, before going to bed. And yeah, it was way more than I anticipated I could do. And so it was kind of eye-opening of wow, okay, this passive learning, I'm able to find time as a, busy person, so to speak. So that was probably the most eye-opening thing about doing this. For this next section, I kind of want to talk about how I accomplished this goal. I did it by choosing a specific show with my language parent. So I chose a show from Argentina called Antes que Nadie, which it's part of Luzu TV, which is kind of it's like a streaming network, and they have a bunch of shows. A lot of them do daily shows. They're 2 to 3 hours, and it's on the radio, it's live streamed on Twitch and YouTube, etc. It's published on Spotify. And so, yeah, there's a ton of input. And I chose Antes que Nadie because it was, it's interesting. It's for kind of influencers. The language parent that I chose is Diego Leuco, who he's about my age. He's 33, I think. I'm 30. And he's kind of one of the main hosts, right? I guess he's the main host, so to speak. He's the one driving the questions and a lot of the prompts. And so because I have Spotify Premium, and there's no ads on there, I mainly watched it on there. And Spotify now, I don't know if this is new to people, but there's videos on there, and so you can watch the video. So I did that most of the time. And then I would also use the like mark as played feature to kind of keep track of what episodes I watched. So I'd watch it, once I was done with the whole episode, like usually within 2 days, then I would mark it as played. And then occasionally I would re-listen to episodes if like, I don't know, I was listening on my computer and then I went to listen on my phone and couldn't remember exactly where it was, so then I would start from the beginning. For time tracking, like tracking my hours, I used Toggle, recommended by the Refold team. I like it because it's cross-platform, so I was able to use it like on a PC, on Mac, on an iPhone kind of thing. Like I said, most of the hours came kind of during the workday. I kind of had a solid routine of like, hanging out with my wife. I'd watch like an hour, she'd watch her show, I'd watch mine. But kind of during the day, on like slower days at work, where I could kind of have something playing in the background, I was able to get in a lot more hours. I think, the most I got one day was like, 6 hours or something crazy. But yeah, I kind of got to a point, like in the beginning, it was pretty distracting, and there's still certain types of work where like you really need to think and it's hard to have that playing in the background. But as I put in more hours, it became easier and easier to kind of have it as background and like listen here and there. For the next section, I want to talk about surprises. So kind of like the biggest ahas of doing this whole goal and everything. Probably the biggest one was like, to me, I looked at this podcast where you've got 4 native Argentinian speakers. This is intended for a native audience. A lot of times they're talking over each other. To me, this was kind of like the pinnacle, or one of the like if you can understand this effortlessly, like then you've got great listening skills. And so for me, like one of the biggest surprises, I think it was around the 40 or 50 hour mark. Argentinian, like the accent, like it didn't feel like 2x anymore. Like before, a lot of times I'd watch Argentinian content, and like to me, like I literally was hearing them kind of talk as if they were talking at 2x speed. And yeah, like I don't know, like there was a point where I like was noticing that it just slowed down. I was like, wow, like okay, I can understand like the word boundaries, the sentence boundaries, like when people are switching, like it made sense. And yeah, so at that 50-hour mark, that was when I was able to pay a little bit less attention, and kind of get more towards that. I think it's level 6 on the Refold comprehension abilities or levels, where it's kind of like that effortless listening, effortlessly. There we go. And so yeah, that was a huge surprise to me. Another surprise is around new words and comprehension. I definitely started noticing a lot more, as I was putting in more hours. Oh, sorry, I sneezed there for a second. But it was really around comprehension. So I started noticing words. I was like, oh wait, I've heard that word multiple times. Or like, oh, I didn't know that word. But, I don't know if I picked up that many in terms of activation, in terms of like hearing it and then going and like using it in my speech. Like let's say, I don't know, 90% of the new words I heard, like out of those 90, like I only really used like 10%, right? So like out of every 10 words that I heard, one I might have started using my own speech. So that was kind of a downside of this, of like, maybe if I was doing some active listening or active immersion, I might be activating more of that, but who knows? The last surprise was around audio quality. This is a podcast show, like they've all got like mics like this, their mouth is like within this area. But one of the cool things they do on the show is, because it's like live streamed and everything, and listeners are listening live, they'll oftentimes have people send in WhatsApp audios, and then they'll play them and kind of react to them. And like in the beginning, it was really hard to follow them because it's like, somebody's like talking like this, and so you have to like pay attention a ton, and they jumble their words and all that. But towards the end, I could tell it was starting to get better, but it made me realize like most of the content I consume is like high quality mic like this. And so I'm actually working on something else, doing a separate goal, where I'm watching a lot of vlogs where it's, there isn't a microphone like this right in front of the speaker. But yeah, just because there were a couple times in the podcast, like there was one where they did this trip to, it was like they went on an ATV excursion, and it was kind of like that vlog style, and like I needed subtitles. It was like bad. It was so hard to understand what they were saying. So anyways, that's something that I realized of, another way to kind of increase my skills as, my listening abilities is like listening to lower quality audio. So like voice messages, phone calls, etc. And I'm going to try that with vlogging, as kind of one of my next goals, or like vlogging content. So in the final part of this video, I want to talk about my takeaways. The biggest one is your listening can always improve. Like before I set out to do this 80-hour goal, I was like, oh, my listening's great. Like it's all effortlessly. Or I would categorize it as effortlessly. But again, 50 hours in, I was like, okay, now like I broke the plateau that I thought I was at. Or I broke the plateau that I guess I was at, without realizing I was at the plateau. So yeah, I was definitely wrong there, and this goal made me realize that. So I'm glad that I kind of did it anyway, just because it surprised me. The other one I want to share as a takeaway is like passive listening is a great way to build up immersion hours. Like I'm sure there's a lot of people, you might be watching this and be like, oh, I've got a full-time job and kids and whatever. And so passive listening was a great way to get in more hours. And it made me feel good. And there were like plenty of times where like when I was speaking Spanish with my daughter, like my output felt better. I was thinking more in Spanish. Things came more naturally. So it definitely, you can definitely notice the difference, especially now that I've slowed down. And I completed this goal maybe like 2 weeks ago or something. And I've already started to notice like output feels a little harder, so, but yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Planning to do kind of more videos like this as I kind of complete different language learning goals. I'll probably do more with Italian as well as I start doing some goals there. But yeah, thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.